It's Talk Funny, a podcast by Mark Bailey and other comics from all over. We came to Japan to ask the Japanese police, as long as you are focusing on stopping only bicycle thieves, could you prioritize politicians that take bribes and also incidentally steal bicycles? You know, real crime? The Talk Funny podcast from NagoyaRadio.com and Nagoya Comedy. Here's Mark Bailey.
Welcome back to another edition of Talk Funny. I'm Mark Bailey. Steve Howard is here.
Hello.
We were talking about publishing and something that happened to me on that site, the same one with the Koreans writing in. What happened was it was started by a French guy, and he paid his $5 an article, which if you get paid anything, it's a lot.
Yeah.
How much do people on Quora get paid?
Yeah, exactly.
And Reddit people get fired for what they write, and they don't. That's a minus income. That's what that is. And so what happened was the French guy, he was a big traveler and everything. He had a big interest in languages. But he just left the site up and then stopped editing it.
Oh, no.
And then he let people edit onto my article and other people's articles. So you had these nerd guys who would put incorrect things about learning Japanese into the article with my name on it. I'd get emails from Japanese professors saying your article is incorrect about Japanese, and I said I actually didn't write one about Japanese. I wrote about Korean, and then the Japanese and Korean people are fighting in my article. He said, "Well, you should change it immediately." So I said, "I don't know how to do that." I wrote the guy, and he doesn't respond anymore. And then I got one regarding your article on how to learn Estonian. I'm starting to think that you have never learned Estonian. I said, "You are correct, sir. I never even wrote that. I don't even remember these articles." Do you write a lot of articles? Apparently, I do. This was like late 90s. We started writing this, and it has evolved into just how's a family friendly a crap show.
You should have just told them. I'm really sorry. I'm an idiot savant when it comes to learning languages, but I'm also schizophrenic, so I don't really know exactly what my other personalities wrote.
Yeah, I'm a sleepwalker, and then I just write these articles. And he said, almost everything in the article was incorrect about Estonian. And I said, what was the correct part that I wrote? Because maybe I should learn it.
Did I write it in Estonian by chance?
And I had another one. I do speak Russian a little bit. I studied it, but I never wrote an article about it. The Estonians and the Russians are feuding. And so somebody wrote me an email, and they said, I read your article about Russian. Have you ever even learned Russian? Well, let's start at the beginning. No, I never wrote that article, so it's kind of irrelevant. And I said, actually, you can actually look at the edits, and it'll say dates, and it'll have a different email address. So if you see a sentence you don't agree with, that's not me.
Right.
That's another guy.
Yeah. Anything that has nothing to do with Korean, which the original article was about, probably wasn't written by me.
I would gladly give the $5 back because I've been spammed, and I'm still getting flamed.
Yeah.
From an article I wrote 25 years ago, and from some articles I've never written.
I actually wrote an article, back in my days when I was I was in a yoga cult, and I wrote this article talking about those days, but also at the end I basically said, I realized that it was none of it was real, and I'm pretty much an atheist, but I still get emails from people basically telling me, well, it's because you weren't following, my guru. If you follow my guru, he's the real guru, then all your experiences will be real. And I'm like, did you read anything I wrote?
Yeah. One of the comments I got was, of course, from a person of female persuasion, and it was very Kafka-esque. I would love to dig up Kafka and just drink some coffee with him. He'd go, maybe you should write the next book. I would explain Japan to him and the things that you can get in trouble for here, and he'd say, I never even thought of that. In Japan, the Kafka-esque world, we just call it the world.
Right.
And I had one from a lady, and she wrote in, she said, I can't believe you wrote what you wrote. And I said, what did I write? She goes, you know what you wrote. I said, I've written a lot of stuff, apparently. What are you talking about? She goes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I said, exactly what are you talking about? She said, if I have to tell you, then you're just playing with me. And I said, no, what if I don't know? She said, don't ask me questions that you know the answer to. And I said, I don't even know why I'm engaging her. And I said, well, if I actually didn't know, let's just say I didn't know what the hell you're talking about. What would my question be? It would be, what are you talking about? So let's pretend that that's true. What are you talking about? You know what? And then she blocked me.
Oh, jeez.
On this show, we try to keep it, I don't know why it keeps being labeled explicit. But I guess the topics are explicit, but I think we're pretty tasteful. We don't do the George Carlin 7. But you had something about profanity.
Oh, I was just wondering because technically, if you're not speaking ancient Hebrew, you're not actually using any profanity. Isn't that correct?
Right.
So
those are the only words that God made.
Right. So I would just want, anybody that complains about our language in any of our shows or any of our writing, hey, I'm not writing in ancient Hebrew, so
technically, Anglo-Saxon and Norse words should be perfectly fine because those are pagan.
Yeah, which includes the word God, which is Old Norse.
Yeah, we were talking off mic and it's still in a lot of Hebrew circles. Still, you're not even allowed to say Yahweh, which is the word they use to mean him. It means that who can't be spoken. That's what it means. Mm-hmm. But that became the word for God, and now you're not allowed to say that. Right? It's the same way with political correctness. A long time ago, you used to be able to call, it was a medical term, imbecile. Mm-hmm. It was a medical term, came from French. Mm-hmm. And then that's insulting, so you can't call them that. Then you have to call them retarded, which was more polite because it just means they're delayed in development. Now that became the word that means imbecile now. You're not allowed to say that. Yeah. Now you're only allowed to say a guy who touts his own website endlessly on a podcast. We don't talk about other guests. Okay.
Yeah, I was reading about the origins of the word God, and apparently it's either Old Germanic or Old Norse, and it means to pour. So if somebody says, do you believe in God? I'm like, oh, do I believe in pouring? Sure, I believe in that.
Well, wasn't it Christopher Hitchens? He said, well, which one? Because you're all you're all atheists to a degree. You're agnostic about 6,000 of the other gods. Why is it when you only talk about your God? I remember when I was a kid, and in a lot of circles, a lot of strict religious circles, there's a passage in the Bible that says you're not supposed to take the Lord's name in vain. Now, I've had somebody explain it. If you read the original Hebrew and the original Greek, what they meant to say was, you don't say that God did this when you don't know if he did it. You don't claim to represent God. That's taking his name in vain, is you're saying, I'm God.
Right.
You don't do that, but somehow it became, you don't say his name when you're angry. You don't say, damn, and you don't say, Jesus, well, goodbye, New York. I mean, everybody says that. That's toddlers are going, Jesus, it's cold in there. But that became corrupted to where you couldn't say Jesus, so people would say, geez. Well, you're not supposed to say "geez" now or "golly."
And there again, I mean, technically, Aramaic, you shouldn't say Jehovah, right?
Right.
I mean, Jesus is Latin, right?
Yeah, and that's what we call him. That's the name. So, but yeah, you couldn't say "golly" because that was a substitute for God, and "geez." And I remember when I was a kid, I think not that young, but maybe 8 or 9, and it was really hot in July in our house, and my dad wouldn't use the air conditioner. And I said something like, it's hot as hell in here. He said, that's sacrilegious. I said, if you were a Satanist, I think it would be sacrilegious. I mean, it's cold as heaven in here. That's not insulting.
I was reading an article, too. They were saying some biblical scholars now think that Jesus, when he used hell, he was actually referring to an actual place where the Romans would crucify people. So it may not even been, referring to the hell that we all assume he was referring to.
It reminds me of my dad chastising me on that, which is funny in retrospect, because it's not sacrilegious at all, hell. If hell's a bad place, then you should be able to say it's as bad as hell.
Right.
I mean, is it not really a bad place? It reminds me of The Simpsons. Remember a long time ago, and they're at the Museum of Criminals or something, and Bart is just playing around in Bonnie and Clyde's car, and Homer says, show some respect, son. This has been Mark Bailey with Steve Howard on Talk Funny.